In this webcast, I'm going to talk about the top 5 things that can cause user unhappiness with IBM Traveler servers. Here's a sneak peek about what I'm going to talk about. The first thing that can go wrong is having insufficient HTTP threads. The next thing is a Traveler server running in Constraint Mode. The third thing is having a hung Traveler Servlet. The fourth thing is the Traveler status changing from green to yellow or from yellow to red and nobody noticing. And finally, number 5 is having insufficient bandwidth between the Traveler server and the mail servers that the Traveler server needs to talk to get the user's mail data. Let's start with number 1, insufficient HTTP threads. Mobile devices talk to Traveler via HTTP. What that means is every time a device is doing a device sync, that consumes an HTTP thread in the HTTP server task running on Domino. Now, the maximum number of threads that HTTP can handle at any given moment is set in a server document. The default value for 64-bit servers is 400 threads. Now, you might think that that's enough threads, and typically when you first install Traveler, that is enough threads. But as the number of devices multiplies and grows over time exponentially sometimes, you can quickly run out of threads and not even know that that condition has happened. IBM recommends that the number of threads that you have is 1.2 times the number of devices that you have. Here are some of the symptoms of having insufficient HTTP threads. Apple device users may experience a message that says, cannot connect to the server, or it may be slow responsiveness when it's opening, sending, or synchronizing emails or contacts and so forth. Other devices like Androids might just have a message pop up that says error 503, server busy. Again, general slowness. Server CPU cycles are diverted into juggling HTTP sessions. So the server only has 400 threads. It's got 500 people asking for threads at any given moment. So it's trying to say, okay, who can I drop? Who's next in queue? Okay, now who can I drop? And this consumes time and attention of the Traveler server, which would otherwise be spent syncing devices. So to know whether you have enough HTTP threads, you first have to know how many devices you have. And you can figure this out by going to the Domino console on the Traveler server and running the following command. That is show stat traveler.push.devices.total. And in the output that follows, you'll see something like this. Push.devices.total equals 225. So if this was the case of your server, your Traveler server would need 270 HTTP threads to service 225 devices, because 1.2 times 225 equals 270. So now you need to know, okay, well, how many threads do I have? An easy way to find this out is to go to the Domino console and type in the command show stat http.workers. And what will come back is something like this. Hopefully, http.workers equals 300. That's greater than the 270, so this particular Traveler server would be fine on HTTP threads. But if the number is less, then your Traveler server and your end users are going to have issues. So if you find that you do not have sufficient HTTP threads, you have to go into the Domino name and address book, go into the server document, find the Internet Protocols HTTP tab, and find the number of active threads field. And there's another place where you have to look is making sure that you have a sufficient number of concurrent connections, and that is also under, in the server document, Internet Protocols HTTP tab, the maximum number of concurrent network sessions. Now, if you do change those values, you're going to need to restart HTTP, which you can do at the Domino console. The command is tell HTTP restart. Number 2, the second issue that can cause unhappiness with IBM Traveler servers is when the server goes into resource constraint mode. Now, resource constraint mode is a feature of Traveler that when the Traveler server detects that it doesn't have enough memory or that it's using too many database connections, it will go into constraint mode. And what that means is I'm going to stop taking on any additional work until I have enough memory, or I'm not using as many database connections or so forth. So once a Traveler server is in constraint mode, the IBM Traveler will not allow any new device syncs or prime sync threads to start, but it will allow existing threads to complete. And what users experience in this case is the same symptoms as issue number 1, insufficient HTTP threads, meaning the Apple devices may see an error message, connect to server, and Android's users might see 503 server busy, and all types of devices might see generally slow responsiveness and sync failures. So how do you know if your Traveler server is in constraint mode or not? The only way that you can tell is to look in the Traveler stats. So at the Domino console command, you can type in the command show stat traveler.constraint.state. And this will give you back a binary, either a 1 or a 0. And 1 indicates that it is in constraint mode, and 0 indicates that it is not. So how do you fix constraint mode? Well, ideally, Traveler will fix itself. So it's got too much workload, it's using up too much memory, so it stops taking on new syncs and it finishes the ones that it's working on. That presumably releases the network connections or frees up memory, and the server comes back fine. Other times that does not quite work and a server restart is required. Number 3 of issues that can affect end users on an IBM Traveler server would be having a hung Traveler Servlet. Now, the Traveler Servlet is actually a core part of Traveler, and for those of you curious, it's actually well documented on the IBM Traveler blogs. It tells everything that the Traveler Servlet does, but the short version of it, it is not just for new device provisioning. It is in the core of handling all the syncs. And the way to find out whether your Traveler Servlet is hung or not is to go to the URL on the Traveler server. So typically it's just hostname/Traveler. And if all is well and good, you should see a screen like this, including the text in green here that says IBM Traveler server is available. And if there's an issue with the Traveler Servlet, you'll get a message in red telling you what is wrong with the servlet. Number 4 issues that can affect end users with an IBM Traveler server is a change in state. Now, the state is the Traveler server's self-assessment of its own health. And the values of state could be green, yellow, and red. Now, to find out which one your Traveler server is, you can type in the command at the Domino console, show stat traveler.status.state, and you will get back something like this, traveler.status.state equals yellow, green, or red. You can also get this in the live console. If you say tell Traveler status, you'll get back not only the overall status of red, green, or yellow, but also the reasons for why it is red or why it is yellow. Issue number 5 is communication with the mail files. So if you type in, show stat Traveler, you're going to get back hundreds of statistics, and buried in the middle of it will be something like this. This Traveler DCA, DB open, time, histogram, then the server name in the long format, then a range and a counter. So let me switch to the next screen here where the text is a little more readable. The line in red here is the one that I'm talking about. I think is virtually impossible for humans to make sense out of, but I'll try to explain it for you, which is that since the Traveler server has started, it has done 98 device syncs with the mail server DOM2, which took between 1 and 2 seconds. And the time ranges, the higher they go, the worse that is. So it also took 74 syncs took between 2 and 5 seconds, and 46 syncs took between 5 and 10 seconds. But that's a snapshot in time, and it's a counter since the server first started. So looking at this right at this moment, I don't know if my Traveler server is having a hard time talking to DOM2 or not. I do know that it has trouble in the past, but I don't know if it's happening now. So the only way that you can really know whether it's having trouble now is knowing what these values are and then checking a little while later and seeing which ones of the numbers have changed. So if I wait 10 minutes and I issue this same command and I see that the 30 to 60 is still 7 and the 10 to 30 seconds is still 36 and so forth, but my 0 to 1 number has gone up, then I can conclude that my Traveler server is healthy. But if these other numbers have gone up, like suddenly the number of opens that took between 30 and 60 seconds is now 50, where it was 7, I know that my Traveler server is struggling to talk to that mail server. So VitalSigns has a solution to this. As I'm sure you may have figured out, these tests are kind of labor intensive and awkward at best. It's not really practical that every 10 minutes or so you're going to type show stat traveler.status.state. They really should not be performed by humans on a regular basis. It's just not possible or practical. So these are tasks best done by a computer system, and VitalSigns is the solution for this stuff. VitalSigns will perform all of these tests that we just saw and many more tests. Also does tests on checking the data store and checks on all kinds of things related to the health of the Traveler server, like whether it has enough disk space and what the CPU is and what server tasks are running and so forth. But the point is that all of these tests and all of this knowledge that is required to ensure that a Traveler server is running to its peak performance is captured in software, and then it can be cloned and you run over and over and over. So VitalSigns just checks on the Traveler server every 10 minutes or every 8 minutes, whatever interval you set, and it will send out an alert if the trouble is detected. And all of that data is combined into an intuitive dashboard that anybody can really understand. Let me just switch over to my browser and show you what that dashboard looks like. So VitalSigns has a dashboard. I'm looking at my Traveler Health page here, and here would be a list of all of my Traveler servers, and there's columns across the top with different metrics of health that are color-coded and made as easy to understand as possible. So let me switch back to the presentation here. So starting with problem number 1, insufficient HTTP threads. Well, VitalSigns does the math for you. It will send out the command asking how many devices you have. It'll send out the command to ask how many threads are configured. It will multiply it by 1.2 and it will make an assessment. Do you have sufficient HTTP threads or not? And if you're approaching the threshold where you're starting to get in trouble, this is going to say approaching threshold, and if you're over the threshold, it's going to say over, and it's going to warn you before those problems loom up. The second one is whether the Traveler server is running in constraint mode or not. So we'll just send the command asking the server, are you in constraint mode or not? And if it isn't, that's a pass in our column. And if it is in constraint mode, that's a fail. And you get an alert about it. And then you can take a look at it and be proactive about it before it starts to make end users unhappy. Number 3 would be the Traveler Servlet. So what we do is we execute an HTTP request of the servlet, and we pass it the credentials that you give it, and then we parse the text that the Traveler server gives us back, and we look for the words is available. And if we see that string in the response from the server, then we conclude that the Traveler servlet is okay. And if we do not see it, we conclude that it is not okay, and that would trigger an alert condition and a color change. Number 4, traveler.status.state. Every time we query the Traveler server, we ask it, hey, how do you think you're doing? And we put it in a column here, and we color code it, green for green, yellow for yellow, red for red. Even a manager could understand that. And if a server changes green to yellow, or if it changes from yellow to red, that would trigger an alert condition, and a message would be sent out. And that's so much better than doing it like this. We just send the command, stick it in the database, and there it is. Now, here's something that's very exciting. Beginning with Traveler 9.0.1.4, status reasons are now available in the Domino statistics table. And this is a feature that was added by IBM at our request, for which we are eternally grateful, because the status reasons were previously only available through the live console, and that meant they were only available to humans, not available to software. But now that it's in the stat table, it's available to software, and that means that VitalSigns can query for the reasons why a Traveler server is yellow or red, and we can include that information in the alert message that we send out and also on the Traveler health page. So if you have a server that's in one of those states, you put your mouse over it and it'll say, I'm yellow and here's why I'm yellow. And as the server goes from green to yellow and it sends a text message or a email notification out to you, it'll say, hey, DOM1 has just gone into yellow. And the reason it did that is because it has 7% free, and that's less than the threshold of 15. Seriously cool. Thank you, IBM, for adding that feature. Finally, the fifth problem with Traveler servers, which would be detecting that a Traveler server is struggling to communicate with a mail server. What we do is we look at all those values of all of those histogram stats, and we remember them between scans, and then we calculate the difference. So, for example, let's say the server was at 100, and 10 minutes later it's at 121. We know that 21 synchronizations have occurred since the last time we checked on that server, and we put that number in the appropriate column. So that's the number of synchronizations that took between 1 second and 2 seconds. And we color code that green because that's great. We want to see positive numbers down here. And if the numbers suddenly start to spike in the other end of the spectrum, say, all day long, we haven't had any device synchronizations that are any mail server openings that took between 5 and 10 seconds or 10 and 30 seconds, and now all of a sudden we do. That'll get color coded, that'll trigger an alert, and you can take a look at that and try to figure out what's going on before the end users notice or before it becomes something you have to explain or send an announcement out about. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I sincerely invite you to try VitalSigns for yourself. We have 2 websites. The first one, www.rprvitalsigns.com, is a website completely dedicated to VitalSigns, and I would recommend that you go there. If you are interested in our corporate lineage and where we came from, RPR Wyatt is the name of the company, and we do have other products there and services available. You could go to either one of those websites, and we would be more than happy to set you up with an evaluation version of VitalSigns. You can test it for as long as you need to on as many servers as you want. See what it finds out about your Traveler servers and your Domino servers and the other things that we monitor, like Active Directory and the ongoing list. Make an assessment yourself. We would love to work with you. Thank you for watching.